Good morning, everyone, and welcome in Your Home Authority with Bryant Heating and Air. Danny and Reggie are in. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. We are very glad that you could join us today. If you have a question about your heating and cooling system or your comfort level in your home isn't what you think it should be, 402-489-1240. That is our number, and one lucky person at the end of the show will win that free furnace checkup from Bryant Heating and Air. And it's a good idea to have that system looked at twice a year, so why not have it looked at when you get that year started up here and just get it done. New Year's resolution: I will check my furnace unit twice a year and have Bryant come out and maintain it for me. Sound like a good resolution?
Perfect.
Sounds like a winner.
I think we need to make sure that a lot of people do that to maintain and make sure that they're getting the maximum efficiency out of their unit and make sure it lasts as long as possible. I mean, we've talked about it before. No one likes to have to suddenly renovate when they weren't planning on it and changing out a furnace unit. So make sure that thing is working the way it's supposed to.
And that is the key, just to keep the efficiency up and keep it finely tuned so that, again, you can get the full maximum out of it.
What are some of the different repairs that you've seen coming through Bryant Heating and Air over the last week or so? Anything standing out?
Yeah, we've been having a lot of bearings going out of blower motors, inducer motors, and part of that reason, we just talked about maintenance, and obviously that is part of it. Some of the newer furnaces and equipment will have sealed bearings, but some of the old equipment, they actually need to be oiled or a little bit of grease or just depending on what the manufacturer recommends. And if that doesn't get done, those bearings go out. So, we've been getting a lot of calls, hearing that little growl. And sometimes some of these motors can be pretty expensive, and you could have taken just a little bit of oil and, for literally cents and and it'll save you a couple $100 at the end of the day. And I know you've had firsthand experience with this quite a bit.
Those motors, if you just a few drops, because of the heat of the motor itself, it'll dissipate that oil on the inside, and that wicking will finally dry out if it's not done. But it's highly recommended that you should oil your motor at least once a year, especially if you have the oilers on your motor to do that.
Well, it's like we always kind of compare it to our vehicles. If your check engine light comes on, or if you're hearing a funny sound in your engine, 9 times out of 10 you're going to want to get that looked at because it's not supposed to make that noise, and if it is, that usually means something's wrong.
That's exactly right. And that preventative maintenance can actually even keep you from getting that check engine light. A couple drops of oil, and you won't even see it. And it's just things you don't think about. And I kind of asked our service manager Dave of why are we seeing such a rash of these right now? And he goes, we had a pretty mild winter last year, and it's been cold, and they've definitely been running a lot longer, these last couple of weeks. So some of those weak spots are, what was starting is definitely starting to show, and they've been sitting there this summer, haven't been used, maybe they haven't been maintained, and again, just a couple drops of oil can save a couple $100.
And don't forget, check that air filter.
Absolutely.
Because every time that does that, and we've talked about that before, every time you let that filter go to where it gets almost completely plugged, it drives the amp draw up in your motor inside your furnace, and with that creates more heat. That's what takes that oil, and it'll dissipate that oil away in that wicking real quick.
It's one of the things you can do diligently to make sure that your furnace is working properly. Well, the other side of Bryant Heating and Air we talk a little bit about is plumbing and electrical, and we want to talk a little bit on the electrical side, but more specifically, incandescent bulbs, the standard little screw-in bulbs that we're so used to. You have an idea, ding, a little light bulb over your head. There's some new laws that are going to go into effect in 2014 that are going to affect incandescent bulbs. Kind of fill us in, Danny, on what's going to happen next year.
January 1st, 2014, 40 and 60 watt incandescent bulbs are going to go away.
Really?
Yes. And most people probably don't realize that, but even in 2012, 75 and 100 watt incandescent bulbs have went away.
Oh.
You
had no idea.
you still might see some of them because the manufacturers can sell out what they have in stock and
get whatever they have left.
Anytime you get one of those type of deals, you get a mass production, but they're not going to be manufactured anymore after January 1, 2012. So, which takes us back to the LEDs, the CFLs, the new halogen incandescents, and really at the end of the day, they're doing it because of energy saving. I kind of read a neat little fact that if everybody in the U.S. went to an LED, CFL, or a high energy light bulb, it would save $13 billion.
Wow.
And that would be the equivalent of like 30 large coal plants.
Holy cow.
The number is pretty astronomical when I read that, and I have no way to know really if that's true or not, but man, that number is just staggering to me.
Yeah, that just seems amazing.
Yeah.
And a lot. Well, and those that are wondering, like the CFLs are the more common ones you'll probably see, and those are the light bulbs that look like curly cues.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
And that's the ones that you see a lot of on the shelves now when you go to a department store or a hardware store, is those CFL bulbs. The LED bulbs, I guess, do they make though? I guess I really haven't seen too many of those. Are those a little pricier than the CFLs?
They do cost a little bit more. Obviously, the energy savings, it will make up for that. It's supposed to have a little bit longer life. I think you're going to see more LEDs. One of the bad raps on CFLs, and rightfully so, is we're back to they use mercury in them.
I was just going to ask. There was a danger aspect with them. I use danger in quotations, by the way.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. So it becomes a problem is when you want to dispose of them later, or maybe you accidentally drop one and break them. You've got that mercury in there, so you do have to take some special precautions, even when you're disposing of them, and even if one accidentally drops. So LEDs is definitely becoming more, and as manufacturing finds more efficiencies, I'm sure you're going to see the LEDs drop, and or you can just wait 6 months and see what the new technology is. That's kind of how that goes some days.
So can people just throw the CFLs away then, or should they have them recycled? I guess, if there's such a concern, I'm afraid, do I just throw this away?
I'm sure most people just throw them away, but if you were, technically, you probably need to get somebody that can handle the mercury and dispose of them environmentally. And, I really haven't heard of any collection sites or those type of things. Maybe you've heard of something, Reggie.
I haven't heard of any collection sites, but they will pick them up when your garbage man comes around. He will pick those things up.
And, of course, I'm sure if you get a hold of the city's recycling department, they can tell you exactly what you can do with them as well, and maybe
you bet.
If you have them burn out, maybe there's a special place you can drop them off and everything. But they save a lot more, but there are some safety aspects that people worry about. The LEDs, though, they don't really have that problem.
Nope, they don't have that problem, but like you said earlier, they're a little bit more expensive, but they do use a lot less energy. And and part of the problem that people have adapting to some of this new technology is the old incandescents, they kind of give off of that kind of yellowish glow. And people have become so accustomed to it. With the new CFLs and LED, you get that really white, bright light. And, some people just don't like that. And, you go back to, when we were getting ready for a show, you go back and you look, and you have people that kind of relate that back that, before you even had light bulbs, you had fire, you had the old oil lamps, and they all kind of gave off that yellow glow. So we've kind of had that yellow glow imprinted into our brains, and people just don't like the white lights. Mm-hmm. But with the LEDs, they're trying to, you can buy different, I hate to say shades, but cool, warm type of shading in them is kind of how they label them now, and really. What you're looking for is kind of a warm. You want to go for the warm. That kind of gets you pretty close to that incandescent bulb.
And by the way, the CFLs, if you have fluorescent bulbs, both tubes and CFLs, a number of different hardware stores in town will take those to be disposed of because they do not go into your garbage. They are prohibited by the city. I just
okay.
did you got to love Google.
I gotta love it.
You gotta love Google. So if you have any questions, you can definitely go to the lincoln.ne.gov website and find the recycling page and find that. But a number of different hardware stores here in town, both big box stores and locally owned, will take those and dispose of them properly. So that's very good to know. So with some of these new laws coming in, what are some main tips that we really want to let people know about?
Well, the biggest tip is, we're so used to buying in watts, 40 watt, 60 watt, 100 watt. Really now the new standard is looms. And, okay, so what equals if I want a 40 watt, what equals that in looms?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at a 40 watt, that's really 450 looms. 60 watt is 800 looms. 75 watt is 1100 looms, and 100 watt is 1600 looms. So we've almost got to change our whole thinking from watts to looms. And what normally happens is when people go into a store, they're maybe looking for a 60. Usually what happens is they'll buy too bright of a bulb. And, it just doesn't fit in with the rest of, maybe the bulbs that they have in their house. So, even another tip would just to bring your bulb with you and have someone in the store help you convert that. Even I have a hard time remembering what equals up. You talked about Google, you got to go online and, okay, so what's my equivalent here when I'm going to go buy a new bulb?
Well, and that's a great idea too. And most of the packaging should have equivalent to 60 watt, equivalent to 100 watts. So some of the packaging, if you're looking, should at least give you an idea too.
That's correct. And some of the other things you want to think about is when it comes to hallways and stairwells and basements and just spotlighting objects, you probably want to use an LED CFL type of bulb. When you're going for living spaces, you want to use the halogen incandescents. So it's really becoming more space-specific in bulbs. We're just used to one bulb fits all.
Yeah, you just throw a bulb in and call it good. Turn it on.
So we've the industry's made this a little bit more complicated. They're trying to get the right bulb for the space, for the right ambience, if you want to say, to light your to light your space.
Now, is that just because of the light it gives off, the type of light, or the brightness, or the color of it? Because like you were saying earlier, sometimes you get that bright bulb and it's just a white light. Maybe you want something a little more warmer.
Yeah, they've got warm, they've got cool. So they're shading probably isn't the correct term, but that's what we're going to use. They're trying to color those bulbs to what people are used to in the past. So. And they kind of recommend warm. Kind of start with warm and see if that works, and maybe move up or down from there if that's quite not to your taste. And when it comes to recessed lighting, you want to use that incandescent fluorescent because you want that light to shine down. And when you get to the LEDs, what they call omnidirectional.
Kind of bright everywhere.
That's right, and it's wanting to shoot it up, and that really does no good. You want that light focused down. And the other thing to be aware of is if you've got dimmer switches. If you've got dimmers on your light bulbs, you want to make sure that you're using an halogen incandescent. A lot of the LEDs and the CFLs, they just don't mix with the dimmers. And I know that they're working on some bulbs that are compatible, but right now they're probably not as reliable as the halogens. So that's just kind of a little bit of FYI. You may not get the longevity out of it.
Along with dimmers, what about like you got your three-way lights? You click for low, medium, and high. Do those CFLs, do those work with that, or is that something where you want to kind of stick with the halogen?
The CFLs can work with that three-way switch.
Okay.
No different than what any other light bulb will. Because the three-way switch doesn't necessarily change. The dimmer switch is when you're trying to lower that illumination that you're getting
off of that.
Trying to get that
mood lighting just right for the movie.
That's where you get into trouble with the switches and with your switches on the wall that can control that.
And probably the last thing you want to look for when you're looking at the package, you want to make sure that it has that Energy Star rating. There's a lot of choices of bulbs out there, and not all of them are Energy Star rated. So if you see a bulb that's Energy Star rated, you know that it's been checked out, it's been tested by the environmental protection agencies, that you're going to get that efficiency. They say that on average, a bulb will save you about $6 a year. So again, make sure you see that Energy Star label on that bulb.
402-489-1240. If you have a question for us, feel free to give us a call. We're here until noon. And we are going to wrap up the conversation here about light bulbs. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit and finish off a conversation from last week as we were talking about furnaces compared to 20 years ago versus today. And we'll get a little bit into heat exchangers when it comes to those furnaces and what has changed with those. A very, very, very important piece of equipment in that furnace is that heat exchanger. And we'll talk about that when we come back with more on Your Home Authority with Bryant Heating and Air on KFOR. Stay close. Welcome back to the show, Your Home Authority with Bryant Heating and Air on KFOR 1240. 402-489-1240 is our number if you have a question about your heating unit. That furnace isn't working the way you think it should be. Maybe you're starting to hear a noise that you haven't heard before. Or, golly, it just sounds a little louder than usual. Anything going on with it, we'd be happy to help you out, see if we can diagnose the problem for you here on Your Home Authority with Bryant Heating and Air. So give us a call, 489-1240. One lucky person will win that free furnace checkup at the end of the show. And let's focus on to those furnaces. A lot has changed over the last 2 decades, and one of the units, and we've talked about this specifically during past shows, is the heat exchanger in those units. A very, very important piece of equipment. First off, Reggie, explain to the listeners, what does the heat exchanger do?
Well, the heat exchanger is where the transfer of your heat from the burners to the airstream that comes up into your house. And that's such a key component in it itself, because if that heat exchanger, what it is just steel, a steel heat exchanger on the inside. Newer ones are made out of aluminized steel on our equipment. The whole thing of it is, that is so key to not have any holes, any leaks. It can hamper the lifestyle of yourself inside that home if you have those holes, because it can create carbon monoxide inside your home, which is a key component that you do not want in your castle, as I like to call it, because you want to be safe and healthy inside that castle.
Now, you said the material used went from steel to an aluminized steel.
Yes.
What did that do for a heat exchanger?
Well, what it did is what Bryant was trying to do with their equipment when they did that is they made the steel, and it has a aluminized steel over the top of it, is what it's covered with. The reason for that is our flue gas temperatures are getting down so close to where when they leave the furnace itself, it could actually condense if it's not quite high enough, and it's a very close borderline in there. And we're drawing those flue gases through this, what they call a serpentine-style heat exchanger. We're trying to pull those flue gases down to approximately down to 245 to 250 degrees. If you get them any lower than that, at that point, it will start to condense. It could condense inside the heat exchanger. It could condense up inside your flue, because maybe it don't have enough heat to get it outside your flue and into the atmosphere. When that happens, that's what causes that rusting effect inside your heat exchanger, and it will eat things away very quickly, because the flue gases, the moisture content that's in it, is a little bit acidic, and once it'll find a spot where it tries to get in, and it just starts eating away at the inside of it.
Is there a change in the longevity of a heat exchanger when you add that aluminized steel to it? Does it last a little longer? And we're going to assume proper maintenance as well.
Yeah, and that is really key. If you talk about what the old heat exchangers were like compared to the new, the old heat exchangers were a lot thicker. They weren't nearly as efficient as what our new heat exchangers are. And they had to thin down that material. So by putting that aluminized steel, it makes that chamber last longer. On the old furnaces, I've seen some of them been around 35, 40 years. Heat exchangers probably still good at them, but they're not very good at efficiency. They're probably about 45 or 50% efficient, especially on the older units that are still out there. And I think there's still some of them still out there, still in use. But it would actually pay people back to actually remove those and put something newer in. Because our new furnaces, they'll last 20 to 25 years if they're kept up.
And the other thing with the new heat exchangers is they've got to build in some elasticity, because that metal's got to expand, it's got to contract. And you talk about some of the older ones, they made them really thick, but the problem was maybe they got them too thick and they became brittle. So when they're heating and contracting, it's just like taking a piece of wire and you start bending it back and forth, and eventually it's going to break.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the same effect with the they're trying to get that trade-off of, like Reggie talked about, the great efficiency, but you also got to keep that elasticity in there. And aluminum actually gets to give a little bit as it heats up and expands. And, the whole heat exchangers didn't have where it funneled through, so you might have a constant temperature on that old heat exchanger, where the new ones, it's hot at the bottom, but by the time it leaves, it's a completely different temperature, so you got different elasticity even through that whole heat exchanger.
Yes, and as it gets cooler at the top, you just need to make sure you have enough heat. And when we do our final checkout, we've got to make sure our blower speeds are set right, the gas pressure is set right. We have a whole gamut of things that we try to go through to make sure that this thing's going to last as long as it can.
When people are looking at let's say they have Bryant come out and they find out, well, your heat exchanger is cracking. It's starting to crack. You go through that maintenance process and find that out. Is it cost prohibitive to replace the heat exchanger, or is it better just you're going to have to just replace the whole unit?
Actually, it's more for a homeowner. I mean, we have homeowners that want to know how much it's going to cost to change that heat exchanger. We can give them that price. The whole thing of it is, it's much better to get a newer style furnaces because the safety controls on that new unit compared to your old unit are so far ahead of where they're at. We have flame rollout sensors on there. We got flue sensors on there. If the flue starts to backdraft for whatever reason, it will actually shut the furnace down if it can't get rid of those flue gases. It's just health and safety issues are so dramatically different than what they were in the past.
Sure.
So it's just a win-win for a homeowner actually to if you want to so-called call it bite the bullet and just change it. Because the heat exchangers, the older ones, are getting much more expensive. And some of them you can't even get any access to anymore.
Sure. 402-489-1240 is our number. Let's go to the phones. Marge joins us on Your Home Authority. How can we help you out today, Marge?
Well, this pertains to the CFL light bulbs.
Okay.
And there was an article in the paper by a dermatologist about causing cancer risk. And it says if the base of the phosphorus surface is chipped or cracked, it could cause UV rays to escape. And if you're sitting less than a foot away, it's the same as those exposed to UV light. And have you heard anything about this?
Yeah, and that is an issue. That's the one thing about it. You know, most of our CFL light bulbs, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they're even built in the United States. We don't even build them here because of the federal laws that are engaged.
Especially when it comes to the CFL, I know there's a lot of concerns. Even we talked about the mercury before. I personally haven't heard that, but that's great information. But the mercury raises such concerns with the CFLs, and I know that people are pretty apprehensive about using them. And right now the LEDs are they're definitely priced a lot higher.
Well, if you don't have to worry about cancer, I'd rather pay the extra price then.
That's exactly right.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Well, Marge, thank you very much for the phone call as well. Lines are open at 402-489-1240. Appreciate the phone call. Before we get to our break here real quick, the last thing with heat exchangers, how long should a heat exchanger last? Should it last as long as a furnace lasts? Is that usually the first thing? If something is going to go in a furnace, is it usually the heat exchanger that goes first, or is there something else that you commonly see?
Usually it's not the heat exchanger unless it's been used and abused. And I guess what I'm trying to say is if somebody doesn't change their filter, and if you leave your filter in there until that thing gets plugged up, or you let your blower get plugged up with the blower wheel on the inside of that, and you can't get that airflow across it, or your coil up above it gets clogged up, it will put stress on that heat exchanger. And the more stress you put on it, sooner or later it's going to find a crack.
Yeah, it's going to go.
So that's not usually the first thing. Sometimes it's other things, the smaller stuff that maybe show up on a furnace. Electronics a lot of times is, it's prone. It's great when it works, but when it stops, you got to replace it.
Technology is great until it doesn't work.
A lot of things you can do about it.
402-489-1240 is our number. We're going to take another break in the program and return with more. Don't go anywhere. Your Home Authority with Bryant Heating and Air returns right after this. And a Merry Christmas to you from Bryant Heating and Air on Your Home Authority here on KFOR. Thank you so much for joining us. Danny and Reggie are both in. And got a couple of phone calls here we need to get to, so let's go to the phones. And Brad is joining us next. Brad, thank you so much for calling us up on Your Home Authority. How can we help?
Hi, guys. I have a heat pump. It's about 7 years old. My question is, in the summertime when the AC is running, it's fine. In the wintertime, the lines that carry the refrigerant up to the unit in the second story of the house, in the wintertime, those lines vibrate inside the wall and rattle like crazy. Before I cut the wall open to see if they need reattached, what would be the difference between summer running and winter running on a heat pump, and what makes those lines vibrate?
Well, what it could be, and I don't know what brand it is, but sometimes we had some issues on some of our earlier heat pumps. We actually had to put different feet underneath the compressor because a lot of times it will come from the compressor inside. It may be just a little bit off balance. And if you put your hand on that line out there, because I've done that several times even when I was back in the service department. This goes back quite a few years since I've been in sales, but it will create a vibration that you'll feel. If it touches the outside, like where it comes into your house, we've always tried to make sure that nothing, the line sets did not touch back. That goes back a few years, when in that 7 to 10 years that you're talking about. I do remember a lot of that stuff taking place. But it's mainly, it could be in the compressor, could be in the Freon charge. I don't know unless I had a service technician actually come out there and find out what's going on with it.
Okay. I just don't understand the difference between summer and winter, because isn't the heat pump doing the same thing year-round?
It is. The only thing is it reverses the flow of the refrigerant, and your discharge is actually going upstairs into your, going back up into the evaporator coil up above, and that's what's creating that vibration in those lines. When you reverse the flow of refrigerant and it's on a standard system, you don't do that. And I don't know, you'd get a lot back into the technology and how the unit is designed. I know that our new units now, a lot of that has disappeared and that noise level has disappeared, but we do have feet that we can put underneath something like that to try to help control that noise level.
All right. Thanks for your help.
Okay.
Brad, thank you very much for the phone call. Appreciate it. Let's go to Carol next. Thank you so much for calling us up, Carol. How can we help you on your home authority?
Well, I have a question about the three different things you can heat with, okay? Your furnace, or geothermal, or a heat pump. I'm really confused on all that. We have a heat pump, but we have had nothing but trouble from about fourth year on. It seems like every year it's a chunk of money to fix something on our heat pump. So they're trying to talk us into geothermal. So I just need some answers about that, please.
Sure.
Well, I'm not sure what's all going on with your heat pump there. The thing of it is, all three options, as far as I'm concerned, are very good options. But Geo is probably the Cadillac of the line, as far as if you were looking at what to put in. It does not have to fight the elements outside. Your equipment don't set outside. It actually sets inside the house. We're using the ground for our heat exchanger down in the ground. We're actually, during the wintertime, we're absorbing the heat, transferring it back up in, and then transferring it through the coils inside on your refrigeration system inside the unit. That's the most economical way to put in as far as cost of operation. It's going to cost you a little more up front. Longevity on a piece of equipment like that might last you 30 years if you put something like that in. I'm not sure what's going on with your heat pump, but I know do you know what brand it is or what the SEER rating was on it by chance?
I don't. I'm sorry. I don't. And it's not one of yours. It's not one of yours, so.
Okay.
Put that out there. It's not one of yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that's okay. To me, it doesn't matter. I'm always trying to find out what it is because, I don't know. Either I'm not sure if it's breaking down every year and what it's breaking down for, but I would hope that a good service technician should be able to find out what's wrong and try to get that thing working, especially if you said it was 4 years old?
It's now in like year 12, but I'm saying at about fourth year on, it started having trouble. I mean, I can't even remember everything that there was, but it's just like it seems like every spring it's like a big chunk of change every year, and they're trying to talk us into a geothermal, and it's like, wow, we just built this house 10 years ago, and it's like, oh,
yeah, absolutely.
And some of that could be, we could look at some of the things that when you get into duct design, that may be something that could be creating an issue, unless, I just don't know without seeing your invoices as far as what's been taking place, but there's a lot of different variables with duct situation. And we have another piece of equipment that we have out there is what it has is a DC inverter compressor if you don't want to go to Geo. and we do a heat loss and heat gain on everything in your house just so we can size the proper size of piece of equipment if it's too large. But that the extreme heat system that we have, boy, I tell you what, the ones that I've put in, and we put in quite a few of those already, people are really, really satisfied with those pieces of equipment. They're very quiet, and they vary the capacity for what it needs inside the house. And that's an alternative to that, the geothermal, if you just didn't want to bite the bullet and pay that extra money for the geothermal.
Yeah, Carol, it's never a bad thing to have a second opinion and have folks like Bryant come out to look and see what they say, too, and you kind of compare notes and go from there, too. You don't feel like you're stuck with one company.
Right, definitely. We will be calling you when this is becoming a great issue. So.
Okay, Carol.
I appreciate your help.
You bet.
You.
Well, Carol, thank you so much for the phone call. We do appreciate it. Yeah, because you're a unit like that, like a heat pump or anything else, your furnace or even a geothermal, whatever it might be, you shouldn't be having constant issues every single year. That's a telltale sign of something else is going on here.
Yeah, like you say, like Reggie said, it may not even be the equipment itself. It may be something, maybe the duct isn't sized right, or maybe the equipment wasn't even sized right to begin with. So you've really almost got to start from square one, and as you said,
those are key components to trying to make a system operate correctly. And it may not be set up right either on the blower speed.
We always talk about matching that piece of equipment to the house, and that's so vitally important. You just can't take it out of the box and hook it up and let it run.
Well, and you had even mentioned that even the ductwork in the house could cause some issues, and that kind of ties into what we're talking about with the heat exchangers and maintenance and blower motors, heat pumps, whatever it might be. If the ductwork is not fitted to match the system that you have in with that blower speed and everything else, that could cause some issues and really strain your equipment.
Yes, and it really has to do with the beginning when the house was originally built. Your cold air returns that come down through the walls, if they have not cut that plate out down low enough, you may be short on cold air return. Cold air return can create a lot of issues, especially in the heat pump mode, because you're not getting enough air back through there to get enough air through your coil itself. Your ductwork could be too small, for your supply. That I've seen that a lot of times in different homes where the ductwork's not large enough to handle what piece of equipment they've actually had inside the house. We've had to go back in and change that.
We've even had service techs come in, and they've gone to a new house, and they'll go in because they're having problems with a blower motor or something, and we're sitting right next to the furnace is probably 2 or 3 other blower motors that they've replaced. And really it comes back to, okay, the blower motor keeps going out, so what's the real reason why it's going out? And you'll find that your ductwork is too small, and it's restricting that, and it causes such a load on that motor that they just keep going out.
Yep, that static pressure is a big thing as far as blower motors are concerned.
402-489-1240. Thank you so much for the phone calls. We are still taking phone calls. If you have one, give us a buzz, and we'd be happy to help you out as best as we can. We got to take another break in the show, so do not go anywhere. Your Home Authority with Bryant Heating and Air returns right after this. And Merry Christmas from everyone at Bryant Heating and Air to your family and friends. Certainly hope you have some plans set up and you enjoy this wonderful time of the year. We appreciate you joining us here as you probably are wrapping up some of that shopping, too. Reggie, I'm talking to you.
Yeah, I've still got to do mine. I'm always the last-minute guy.
Danny, you're good. You're done.
Thank you. Thanks goes to my wife, really.
We were giving Reggie a hard time because he hadn't even started yet, and he's got 4 days left here before Christmas.
It's crunch time.
It's crunch time. Nothing like procrastinating. Hopefully some good deals for you.
And Christmas is at my house, so I've got to be prepared.
Oh, no. 402-489-1240 is our number. Let's go back to the phones. Harold joins us. Harold, thank you so much for calling us up on Your Home Authority. How can we help you today?
Well, I have baseboard heating that you guys installed 30-some years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the thermostats on the ones that are installed directly on the heater are not very precise anymore. You've got to either turn them up and up and up, and then they get too hot, and then you turn them down and down and down. But should I just replace those, or can you replace them, or what?
You can replace those. I just don't know how old they are. What I'd have to have done probably is take one off if you wanted to bring it into the shop, maybe our guys could look it up. Brian could look it up and try to see if he can find a replacement for you.
Otherwise, buy a heater. Is that it?
That would be the next step, is buying the full new heater and put it in its place and reinstall it. Sometimes on those older controls, they just aren't going to be as accurate as what the newer style units are. So it might behoove in the end just buying a new one. But if you wanted to, you could take it off and bring it into our shop at 5401 Cornhusker, and we could sure check it out and see if we can get access to something like that for you.
Well, they're the same. I guess they're the same thing as the wall-mounted ones, but they seem to work all right. It must be the heat or something, I guess.
Okay. There's something inside there. There's just a metallic spring on the inside of those. A lot of the times on the old ones, it just wears out over the years.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Harold.
Harold, thank you very much for the phone call. Lines are open, 402-489-1240. As we kind of talk about a few of the different changes that have been going on over the years with those furnace units. And a lot of people, I guess we should clarify real quick, too, if people are interested in the heat pump or geothermal in their home, they may think that they don't need that furnace anymore. The furnace goes away and you just have the heat pump. But that furnace you still need in there because, one, you have the blower, and two, it's nice to have that backup.
Yeah, now, when you talk geothermal, that's all self-contained.
It's all self-contained.
Everything is self-contained. Now, we have different applications that we can do with the geothermal because we can do a gas furnace, if you want a gas furnace, with a geothermal heat pump system with an evaporator coil setting on top of it. But most people don't usually do that. If we have the room that we can do this, but I tell you what, when we do that geo system with the backup electric heat on the inside, our geothermal systems is going to actually heat the house and when it gets down to 0 plus or minus 5 degrees. Most of the time, I've never seen the electric elements even hardly come on. It's just very, very minimal. And the geothermal heat pump, with taking that heat out of the ground, the ground's 53 to 54 degrees down there, and we're extracting that heat and putting it back up into our house. It's like a gift from heaven.
Oh, I bet it is. Well, and it goes to show if you are interested, just call up Bryant, have them come out to the home, do that heat loss, heat gain, figure out what equipment you would need, and really kind of customize the project basically, and what types of equipment you're going to need to make sure that you have everything set up, work within your budget, and take care of everything. Back to the phones. Let's join now Mark here on Your Home Authority. Thank you so much for calling us, Mark. How can we help?
I'm getting ready to remodel an attic, and I don't have any heat at all up there. I'm thinking about doing baseboard heaters. Is that a pretty efficient way to go?
Baseboard heaters, you're going to get pretty much about a straight, it's like electric heat. You're going to get a 1-to-1 ratio. Is this like a third floor or something like that up in the attic?
Yeah, it's a third floor in just one room, so it's a pretty small area, about 15 by 15.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have little mini splits that you can put up in there. Do you want to air condition it and heat it?
Yes, eventually. I thought about doing a window air, but I also am looking at maybe one of those splits like you're talking about.
I tell you what, if you put a mini split that we're using, that'll heat that place down to about minus 14 degrees outside. I've never seen them not be able to heat it. We can size that for you. We'll run a heat loss and heat gain up there. And it'll cool the upstairs the same way.
Okay.
That'd be a win-win situation. You wouldn't have to have all those wires pulled around for your baseboard heat, and it would take care of both things. It'd take care of your heating and cooling for that area all in one package.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. How much moisture is created? Is there a drip system that you need to have a drain to the outside?
There would be a drain that for when it goes into the air conditioning mode that we would have to get outside. We'd come out and take a look and see how we can get it out of there. We'd have to bring our refrigerant lines in from the outside. And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll chase those refrigerant lines down to the outdoor unit, and then we'll actually let it drain to the ground on the outside.
Okay.
Okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Mark, thank you very much for the phone call. Appreciate it. Those mini splits are great for that exact purpose. If you have a small room, or even maybe the garage, or if you have like an outdoor little screened area that you want to kind of just regulate a little bit, those mini splits come in great because, like you said, it's all in one package.
Yes.
Heating and cooling.
People love to use those for sunrooms. There's the through-the-wall units, and I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but they take up space. If you put that mini split in there, I tell you what, it hangs up on the wall. You can't hardly hear this thing run. It's that quiet, and it moves the air across. And everybody that we've put one in for, I've never heard of anybody ever being upset about putting one in and thinking it was a waste of money, because it really increases the living ability in that area 4 seasons instead of only maybe using it 1 or 2 seasons. Because a lot of times you can use it in the spring and the fall. Summertime it's really hot. Wintertime it's really cold.
And it works out pretty darn good.
Yeah.
402-489-1240 is our number. If you have a question like the folks here so far today, give us a call. We'll be happy to help you out. Got a few minutes left in the program, and one lucky person will get that free furnace checkup at the end of the show. And it sounds like a few people could really use that.
Sounds like it. But even going back to Reggie talking about the mini splits, they're doing, Habit for Humanity is doing a study in Iowa where they're actually taking the units and getting rid of the conventional air conditioning furnace or heat pump, whatever, and they're putting them in the house, and they're not putting any backup heat, and they're doing studies to see if they can actually heat and cool a house with just these mini splits. And the advantage of the mini splits is kind of like in this application, you don't have to run the duct, you don't have to have the return airs, you don't have to have all that stuff. So it's probably a little bit cheaper application. And I haven't heard lately how their study's going. They're into their first winter. I know that they just got it installed probably about a month ago. So it's going to be interesting what their study comes out to be with that.
402-489-1240. We got to take our final break in the show. We'll be back with more right after this. Stay close. Final segment of the show, Your Home Authority with Bryant Heating and Air. 402-489-1240 is the number. And let's get back to the phones. And up next, we have Dale joining us. Thank you so much for calling us up, Dale. How can we help you on Your Home Authority?
Good morning, gentlemen. Currently, I've got about a 24 by 24 garage, and I heat it with just a portable kerosene heater when I'm out there working. You talk about these splits. What kind of cost? I mean, is this something that would work good to heat and cool a garage where I do quite a bit of work out of there? And what type of cost are we talking for something like this?
Well,
investment and monthly bill.
The monthly bill is going to be very, very cheap to heat and cool that area if you're doing a lot of work in that area. The main thing is what I need to do is what we would have to do as a company. We need to come out and do a heat loss and heat gain on that garage area, even though it's 24 by 24, and look and see what we got for power supply and everything else. And then we can give you a real good cost as far as what it would cost to do that. And the size makes the difference as far as that dollar amount, I guess what I'm trying to tell you. But as far as economy, do you keep it the same temperature all the time with the kerosene heater, or do you?
I do not, just as needed when I'm working out there.
Okay,
and you're fully insulated walls and ceiling.
That's the other thing that's a key component as far as what size of piece of equipment we need to put in there. But it would behoove Dale coming out there and just having us do a quick heat loss and heat gain. Figure in, is your garage door insulated too?
No, it is not.
That would be, I know a homeowner that the garage was all insulated except his garage door wasn't. And what he actually did is took foam and put it in between the panels and trying to insulate it the best he could.
Yeah.
And it made a difference. And that unit, he's very pleased with it out there. He does his workout in his garage, and it works pretty well for him.
Okay.
So, best bet to have Bryant come out and just at least give you that would be the best way to get a very accurate estimate for you instead of just throwing numbers at you on the air. They kind of really kind of put it in closer to stone than anything else for you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Dale.
Thank you very much. We got about a minute left in the program. Enough time here. We'll sneak Kevin on. Kevin, thank you so much for calling us up. How can we help you today?
Can you tell me, does an electric heater require the same amount of maintenance as a gas furnace or not?
No, not really. The only thing you got your electric elements. The only thing that does happen is if you have bad connections inside where your heat package is located at, it's always a good idea to have those checked because they can, just because of heat going through that connection where it's at, it can burn the connection off and it can create a problem for you as far as getting any heat out of there.
How often should you have an electric one looked at then?
Honestly and truthfully, I have a heat pump with electric furnace in my house, and I check it every year. The
Once
same
a year.
way as I would do it don't take long to do that. But the main thing is I don't want any issues. That's me personally. And we, as a company, we come out with anybody that has a heat pump in their house, an electric furnace. We go through those same procedures to make sure we don't have any bad connections or anything inside.
Alrighty.
Okay. Kevin, thank you very much for the phone call. Danny, we got to give away a free furnace checkup, but you looked at me kind of funny when I said that earlier. You got something up your sleeve?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
It's Christmas, and everybody must be a winner on Christmas.
So everyone is getting a free furnace check?
Everyone.
Well, everyone that called in, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. and to everyone listening, Merry Christmas from Reggie and I, and
Merry Christmas
and
and Happy
Bryant,
New Year.
And have a great New Year.
Absolutely. Yep. Well, everyone who called today, we do have your information, so Bryant will get a hold of you and get that scheduled and everything. So very Merry Christmas from Bryant Heating and Air. Gentlemen, you guys have a Merry Christmas as well. Finish your shopping, Reggie.
I will.
Danny, always a pleasure. Reggie, thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone
Thank
have
you,
a Merry Christmas and a great weekend.
Merry Christmas, Chris.